Hi everyone, and welcome back to this channel where we are discussing the issues of law, compliance, and technology. My name is Tony, and today's episode will be about probably the hottest thing that happened in 2024 and will definitely have consequences for the years 2025, which is the election of Donald Trump. The questions for this video are really, what does it mean for crypto, for the regulation of crypto? And second of all, what does the regulation of crypto have to do with the victory of Donald Trump? Trump's current position on crypto is literally make America great again, but this time with crypto. This is exactly what he tweeted in September 2024. Later on, he was making some picks in terms of the persons who will be in charge for the crypto policies. Very prominent figures. We all know part of them, especially from Twitter. But we're gonna talk about this a bit later. But what's important is that this is just very short address, but he has made actually a very long address, very important one. It happened in July 2024 when Trump spoke at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. And it was actually the first time when the president of the US, the former president of the US, was speaking at this event. It was a niche event for crypto freaks, but nowadays it's definitely a very high level event. And there he made a really presidential address, State of the Union in a way, where he was stating that crypto is important for the US national policy. He equated crypto industry to steel industry in the 19th century. This means a lot, obviously. The immediate results of Trump's victory that we know, and which is not just a statement, but it's something more, is the resignation of SEC's chairman, Gary Gensler. It was clear that Trump would fire him on day one, and Gensler preferred to make it himself. So Trump's comeback with this crypto policy in hand like a spear is definitely something new, and it's definitely not something, just make it made up out of the blue. 2019, for example, Trump expressed his skepticism about Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies in a tweet, saying that he's not a fan because Bitcoin is made of thin air, it's highly volatile, it's used for potential fraud. So these are all things that a typical traditionalist politician from both Democrat side, Republican side would say, some kind of a old guy representing old money in traditional industries. But out of the sudden, we see how a very traditionalist, old gentleman, Donald Trump, has joined forces with revolutionaries and even religious leaders of innovation, such as Elon Musk. And this looks like a union of people who are completely different. So the question is why this happened. Why Trump decided to ban crypto and won. First of all, obvious thing, Trump started looking at crypto because Bitcoin, number one cryptocurrency, has become very serious and very valuable asset. There are lots of crypto users, and there are lots of money, millions and billions of dollars. Trillions of dollars that are invested in this asset. This means that this asset has for representation, and it's worth it to speak with the audience that are believing in this currency or in this asset. Second reason, crypto has become an important element of the right-wing political agenda at global level. We remember and we know Nayib Bukele from El Salvador, who was buying out cryptocurrencies every day, and Javier Milei with his policy on crypto. So it's a large group of people who are on the global level interested in crypto. Most of them are right-wing. Most of them are liberals. Second of all, very important to understand is that crypto inside the US has become a part of the right-wing political agenda. crypto is a battlefield for which the right wing, the Republicans, are more are better at that. So it's like, Mongols are better fighting on the steppe, but the Republicans are more comfortable discussing the benefits of decentralized finance than the Democrats. Republicans are more likely to vote for crypto liberties. Some people would say, well, cryptocurrencies, they are neutral. It's just technology. They're not right or left wing. Well, yes, maybe technology itself is not. But when you think about crypto as a concept, let's say certain consequences for the life of the people, well, this will be mostly things that are attractive for the right wing. Things like decentralized structure, self-regulation, deregulation, anonymity, lack of central bank and tax oversight. These are the things that are associated with crypto. Of course, there are other things. Here, I would refer you to the books of the quite famous author from the Virginia Commonwealth University, Professor David Columbia. He wrote two books. One is called The Politics of Bitcoin, and another is called The Cyber Libertarianism, the right-wing politics of digital technology. It's important that he was a leftist, obviously. He was the Democrat, probably. So he's kind of like criticizing the digital economy for being too right. What was happening in terms of regulation of crypto industry? Let's start with the White House and let's say strategic level. So maybe you remember that in March 2022, President Biden signed an executive order officially titled Ensuring Responsible Development of Digital Assets, also known as the Crypto Order. The order was supposed to put an end to the lack of clarity. It was obviously welcomed. Bitcoin rose up to 40,000, other cryptocurrencies as well. So everyone was happy. Well, it prescribed the powers, Treasury, SEC, CFTC, Commerce, Fed Reserve, to come up with the crypto regulation that would protect consumers, protect the United States, mitigate illicit finance, reinforce the United States leadership in the global financial system, promote access to safe and affordable financial services, support political advances, and introduce the US CBDC, something that is regulated by central bank. But what was the result? So it's September 2022, so 6 months later. White House was supposed to publish the regular fact sheet showing the progress, and they did it. Okay, so they included enforcement actions on the SEC side. This we'll talk about increases of staff, obviously, because they needed to have more people. Basically, other things were Treasury Department intensified scrutiny, increased calls for clearer regulations. The only bill, by the way, that was actually submitted was the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, the crypto bill of that time, submitted by Republican Senator Cynthia Lummis, Democrats, and Kirsten Gillibrand. But it was is stuck somewhere in dungeons of the Congress. So the crypto order, because of its emptiness, basically turned out to be a failure. In the US, there are two agencies that are supposed to control the area which is now taken by digital assets, and it seats SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, and CFTC, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, controlled securities and commodities, respectively. They have been active since the 1930s, in accordance with the laws that have been there, obviously much before the introduction of digital assets. And we can say that basically what happened is that SEC and CFTC cannot define the ambits of their competence in terms of digital assets. Meanwhile, SEC started something that was indeed a period like an anti-crypto crusade. The years 2022, 2023, 2024 have become the era of so-called SEC's regulation by enforcement. About 127 enforcements according to the book edited by Charles Carrigan called Crypto and Digital Assets Law and Regulation. Really recommend this book, and we have an interview with Charlie on our YouTube channel. You can watch them. Moreover, SEC chose not to issue any risk alerts or no action letters, nothing that would actually help the industry to get compliant themselves. Besides that, SEC threatened the whole crypto industry by flying here and there the Howey test, claiming that the coins such as Cardano and Solana and Algorand and everything except for Bitcoin are actual securities under the Securities Act of 1933 and have to comply with all the paper work requirements. This all, of course, made the whole crypto markets very nervous. Just look into this video.
Ether is one of the most popular digital assets and powers the Ethereum blockchain. Back in 2018, then SEC Corporation Finance Director Bill Hinman stated that he believed Ether was not a security. Last month, CFTC Chair Benham expressed his view that Ether is a commodity. The State Attorney General of New York asserted in a court filing last month that Ether is a security. Clearly, an asset cannot be both a commodity and a security. Do you agree?
Actually, all securities are commodity under the Commodity and Exchange Act. It's that we are excluded commodities. But I would agree that a security cannot be also an excluded commodity and an included commodity. I'm sorry, Chair, just to talk about the Commodity Exchange Act more precisely.
Okay, so do you recognize, how would you categorize Ether then?
Look, I think that the general sweep of what Congress did, not just in the 30s, but as amended.
I'm asking you, sitting in your chair now, to make an assessment under the laws as exist. Is Ether a commodity or a security?
Without speaking to any one.
I know you've repeatedly said that you're not going to speak to one, except you've spoken to one, Bitcoin. So I'm asking you to speak to a second one, the second largest market cap here.
And speaking to the tokens, there's 10 to 12,000. If there's a group of entrepreneurs in the
asking
middle,
about one.
The public is anticipating a profit based on the...
I'm asking you a specific question, Chair Gensler. I said this in private. This should be no shock to you. I'm asking this question. Is Ether a commodity or a security?
And again, it depends on the facts and the law, and if there's a group of individuals...
I'm asking you about the facts and the law sitting in your seat and the judgment you are making.
And so, Mr. Chair, I think you would not want me to prejudge because I'm also...
But you have prejudged on this. You've taken 50 enforcement actions. We're finding out as we go, as you file suit, as people get Wells notices on what is a security in your view, in your agency's view. I'm asking you a very simple question about the second largest digital asset. What is your view?
And my view is if there's a group of individuals in the middle that the public is anticipating...
All right, so let me just ask a second question then. Do you think it serves the market for an object to be viewed by the commodities regulator as a commodity and the securities regulator to be viewed as a security? Do you think that provides safety and soundness for the product? Do you think it provides consumer protection? Do you think it serves the value of innovation? I think no should be a very simple answer for you here.
I think
that uncertainty is bad, is it not?
And I think that Congress has said that there's one agency, the Securities and Exchange Commission, under this committee.
And you won't answer my question, and you're the head of that agency. So give me a break. Come on.
I'm answering it in the generic because you would not want me to speak about any one set of facts and circumstance.
Okay, so, but you've already spoken. Have you said anything about Bitcoin?
My predecessors and the agency itself has spoken to them.
Okay, but you're not willing to do the same about Ether. Okay, so let me just step back. There's a lack of clarity here in the marketplace. Can you at least agree to that?
I think that the clarity is there. The law is clear.
All right.
There's a group
so
of individuals
let me be explicit about this. The market doesn't see it. Your regulatory actions and the CFTC's regulatory actions.
The issue is that Gensler is considering the law very clear. There's no need for a new law, and everything is nice, but I will not tell you exactly what is the bright line between commodities and securities and where the digital assets are in these categories. Coinbase was numerous times addressed the SEC with letters, phone calls, subpoenas to discuss the status of whether or not it's compliant or not compliant, and to get registered as an exchange if it's needed. SEC just did not respond. Of course, the definition of crypto as a security is one of the obvious problems here. A basis for determination whether or not something is a security or commodity is how we test. It's the test suggested by the Supreme Court in the 50s. The test contains 4 elements: investment in the common enterprise, investment in a group of people in the common enterprise with the expectation of profits from the efforts of others. So 4 elements. The definition looks very handy, but actually it's completely unclear. And where are the boundaries of it? Where are the ends of it? Control over businesses and control over U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens are not allowed to use certain services, irrespective of whether or not they are in the U.S. or outside of the U.S. SEC controls what they can do and what they cannot do. Without providing clear rules, this discourages businesses and stops innovation. Pick a very nice book on this subject. It's called The Rule of Nobody: Saving America from Dead Laws and Broken Government by Philip K. Howard. Fantastic guy, by the way, a lawyer. Rule of Nobody picked from Hannah Arendt, and he there describes the absurdities that can find in the U.S. social matrix and social fabric. Is it so bad? Is it a completely terrible organization and has nobody there who can be on the side of the good? It is a commission. It has 5 commissioners, 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And now I guess the balance will change. In fact, not every commissioner is as Kafkian as we see from their activity. Let me introduce you to SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce, whose motto is something like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Has shown an interest in pushing us forward. They may decide to give jurisdiction over a lot of this stuff, not to us, but to the CFTC or another regulator. But I think if Congress does something, that obviously provides a level of clarity that we wouldn't otherwise get. But I do urge you to talk to us. If you see us put out a rule proposal that you think has implications, write us a letter. It doesn't have to be formal. Just send us an email. You can always reach out to me. If you see someone give a speech and you just disagree with I'm not suggesting that you all watch us closely all the time, but you might see someone make a comment, give a speech that you think is just not right. Send them an email. This is a country where you can engage with your regulators. You might not hear back, but the person may nevertheless be taking into consideration your comment.
She's, by the way, 20 years younger than Gensler, and she stays in the SEC after the resignation of Gensler, and we return to this later. She is a fantastic woman, at least because she was suggested originally, even though she's Republican, she was suggested originally as SEC commissioner by Obama administration. And then she was not supported in the Senate. I probably know why. And then in 2017, she was again suggested by Trump's administration, and she was approved. She has a book just called Dodd-Frank: What It Does and Why It's Flawed. What is Dodd-Frank? It's a Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. It was basically the act that was designed to punish in a way, the companies that were engaged in all this embezzlement shenanigans that happened in Wall Street in 2008, Fred and Muck, Fannie Mae, all this financial crisis, they end up in turmoil in the US. The Democrats, after they took the power, they instituted the reform, and they suggest new set of restrictions were supposed to do in respect of crypto, but they did not. They just failed to do it. And this happens almost every 10 years. So she said, she made a book called Dodd-Frank, What It Does and Why It's Flawed. Fantastic thing. And so when she was in the approval proceedings in the Senate, she got in trouble with Elizabeth Warren, who is the famous senator, the Iron Lady, one of the leaders of the Democratic Party, and the prominent member of the Congress who was doing Dodd-Frank act like for a long time, and she's a very big supporter of this act.
The job of SEC commissioner is largely to be a watchdog, to make sure that the public is protected and the markets are honest and fair. After the financial crash of 2008 showed us that Wall Street was out of control, Congress passed Dodd-Frank to try to rein them in. And the SEC was directed to write or enforce dozens of rules to protect our financial systems. Now, Ms. Peirce, in the past few years, you've attacked many of those same rules. For example, you edited and contributed to an entire book called Dodd-Frank, What It Does and Why It's Flawed, which criticizes several SEC rules required by law. You wrote that the Volcker Rule, one of the key provisions to deal with too big to fail, quote, requires regulators and industry to pour countless hours into an effort that may end up impairing rather than shoring up our financial institutions and our markets. It's nothing to celebrate. You wrote that Congress should, quote, perform major surgery, close quote, on Dodd-Frank to reduce its directives to agencies, and you argued that the SEC, quote, is a prime candidate for mandate trimming. You have described the CEO pay ratio disclosure rule and the conflict minerals disclosure rule, two SEC rules that are required by Congress as, quote, pointless Dodd-Frank mandates. What you propose, as best I can tell from your writings, is less oversight of big banks, fewer efforts to rein them in, more chances for them to take on big risks, boost their profits, and if things go wrong, come crying to the government for another bailout. Now, you are certainly entitled to your opinion and to express it as loudly as you want. But the question is whether someone should be put in charge of enforcing laws that they think are unnecessary or counterproductive. You know, no one hires a watchdog who isn't committed to enforcing the rules. So I want to ask, what kind of watchdog will you make if you believe that parts of Dodd-Frank are, and I'm quoting you, pointless, and you think that Congress should repeal much of it?
Senator, I certainly understand your concern, but I wrote those comments not in the context of a regulator charged with implementing the rules, but in the context of an academic researcher whose goal is to suggest a financial regulatory architecture that will work better at protecting investors and ensuring that people take responsibility for their own behavior. The reason I don't think you need to be concerned is that I was a regulator. I was a regulator for 8 years, and I was able to do the job. And certainly in asking you to confirm me for this job, I'm not asking you to confirm me to not implement rules, but to implement rules. And in fact, the time that I spent here on the staff was very useful in teaching me the importance of regulators adhering to what Congress tells them to do. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with a regulator saying, we're going to do this as you asked us to do. We do have concerns, but we're going to do this. And that's what I would do if I were there. I would work on implementing the rules as best as they could be implemented, and pointing out where I thought there might be issues that Congress should look at again. But until Congress looks at those again, the responsibility of the agency is to enforce the rules.
What is happening when you are writing a book against the opinion of one of the leading senators when you are facing the senator in a committee room. The key question is, will you, Ms. Peirce, think when you apply certain law, or you will be doing it as a robot? And the answer is, I will definitely think. And Senator Warren says, then you are not fit for this job. Peirce is the frequent speaker at different podcasts on crypto. The funniest part is when she speaks together with sitting side by side in Congress, sitting together with Gary Gensler. Just look into this.
I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. Chair Gensler, in March, the Agriculture and Financial Services Committee sent you a letter about the regulatory treatment for Ether, the native token of the Ethereum blockchain. In the letter, we expressed concern the SEC is using different terms to describe digital assets. This includes crypto tokens, crypto security tokens, crypto asset securities, digital asset securities, and digital asset securities that are investment contracts. Does the SEC differentiate between crypto tokens and tokenized securities?
Whether any one offer or sale of an asset is a security depends on the facts and circumstances. In terms of the language or nomenclature, it's less about the terms, it's more about the economics, and it really goes down to a Supreme Court test, which is the law of the land, called the Howey test, and whether an investment contract is being offered and sold to the public, and that public is looking to others in a common enterprise, anticipating a profit. So the labels matter less than what the economics are.
But there are different terms, and words have meaning, and the fact that you've used multiple different words to explain what seems to be the same phenomenon, I think really raises questions about clarity.
Well, the laws are clear, and it's written by the Supreme Court, but also...
The laws are clear, but what we're seeing from the SEC is a lack of clarity. That's what I'm trying to ask you about. You have no... The direct question is about the different terms, and rather than answering that question, you answered a separate question. Kudos to you. Commissioner Peirce, let's get into this question. Do you think that one reason why multiple terms are being used here for crypto is that there's no regulatory clarity or consensus identifying which tokens may or may not be offered pursuant to an investment contract?
I think that's absolutely true. We've taken a legally imprecise view to mask the regulatory lack of clarity.
So this question of an investment contract, the SEC defined crypto asset securities as an investment contract represented by the underlying crypto asset. Yet, tucked away in a footnote and on an amended complaint, the SEC clarified a security is determined by the, quote, contracts, expectations, and understandings centered on the sales and distribution of a digital asset, and not that the digital asset itself is a security. Is the SEC using inconsistent standards here? I mean, is that what's happening?
I think what's happening is that we're trying to be ambiguous because the legal precision carries with it real implications. And this is why people have been coming to us and saying we need clarity. Is the token itself a security? Or is it part of an investment contract? Is it being sold together with an investment contract? If it is, what is that investment contract and how long does it track along with the token? By using imprecise language, we've been able to sort of suggest that the token itself is a security apart from that investment contract, which has implications for secondary sales, it has implications for who can list it, and I think this is absolutely, we've fallen down on our duty as a regulator not to be precise, and so tucking into a footnote that yes, we admit that now actually the token itself is not a security, that's something that we should have admitted long ago and then started wrestling with the difficult questions.
Okay. So would a statutory definition provide that clarity for the agency? Or is this something the agency can do itself?
We certainly have authority where we can provide guidance, we can use our exemptive authority. It's always helpful to have Congress weigh in, But there certainly are some guidelines we could provide in this area that we have chosen not to provide.
But a statutory definition would help.
Well, I always welcome the input of Congress.
That's fantastic. Everybody's writing, your fellow commissioners are writing that down. We hope to hear more of that today. So let's continue.
Yes, this is hilarious, of course. This is indeed the SSC of the athlete versus the SSC of the smoker. We will definitely see Hester Peirce saying more affirmative and supportive things in respect of crypto in the future. But let's go into the legislation. So Congress actually has made several attempts to legislate crypto in the last 3 years. In 2022, following the crypto order, as I said, Cynthia Loomis and Kirsten Gillibrand, they introduced the Responsible Financial Innovation Bill. It didn't go anywhere. It stayed, I guess it was just like it took maybe 2 actions only in the Senate, and it didn't go anywhere, really. It just stuck. There was also Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act, introduced by Senators Spade now and Boozman, aimed just the same thing, to designate certain digital assets as commodities, establishing the framework for the regulation by the CFTC, again introduced in 2022 and has not passed. Another attempt in 2023 with submission called, the bill was called FIT, Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century. It was sponsored by Representative Thompson and 11 other representatives. And the idea was, again, to set up the regulatory framework for digital assets. Just the same idea as Loomis-Gillibrand's bill. Right now, it's adopted in the House and just submitted to the Senate. We will see how it goes. But what was the position of SSC in this regard? Was it in support of any legislative effort? No. It was actually against the bill on Wednesday to establish a new network, a new framework for cryptocurrency exchanges, despite the red warning from the U.S. Securities regulator, Securities and Exchange Commission, about potential financial risks. This is hilarious, of course, how SSC is behaving in this sense. So currently, there is only one piece of legislation having at least some connection with digital assets. It's called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It mentions digital assets only 2 times. One, the definition of broker, for those who is responsible to provide transfers in digital assets to another person. So basically wallets. And another one is to anti-money laundering requirements for digital assets. Just 2 things. That's it. No, the Democratic Party did not have any agenda for cryptocurrencies, unfortunately. So they just did not make effort in order to counteract possible attacks from the Republican side in case of the presidential election. What exactly happened? What happened with the government? Why stalemate? What happened? I have several explanations. None of them actually are theory of regulation, but they're all talking about control, right? You probably saw a video. It's the most watched video about crypto on Financial Times YouTube channel. Usually all of their videos about crypto, they're like, they collect several hundreds of thousands of views, but this is like several hundred thousands. And it's called, very seriously, it's called Cryptocurrencies, How Regulators Lost Control. I was looking at this and thinking, why they say lost control? Why not regulation? Why control again? So the short answer that I was thinking about in terms of psychology, on the psychological side, is that when you don't know how to regulate something, you want to control it. It's just like with people. When you are sure how to engage with someone, it can lead you to a desire to exert control over this person. There are several classical theories about that. One is the classic psychodynamic theory of Sigmund Freud. Freud emphasized that much of the human behavior is influenced by unconscious motivations and desires. This includes repressed emotions and unresolved conflicts from childhood experiences that manifest in adult behaviors, and there are defense mechanisms when you feel not good. One is denial or repression, when you repress certain thoughts out of conscious awareness. Projection, when you're thinking that someone is thinking bad things about you. And then there is control. It's a defense mechanism. As a defense mechanism, exert control over others or situations can provide you a sense of safety or predictability of the situation in face of uncertainty. So here it turns out, for example, a hypothetical Gary Gensler may experience unconscious feelings of insecurity related to unresolved childhood conflicts, for example, and he resorts to defense mechanism by exerting control over the cryptocurrency community in the form of enforcement actions. The second one is also nice. It's called the transactional analysis. It's a psychological theory developed by Eric Berne in 1950s. It focuses on the interactions and transactions between people. So the idea is how people transact to each other. People are in three ego states. One is parent. So you have like an internal parent that exerts levels of control, nurturing, support, protection, etc., etc. Then there is adult, which is processing of information without bias from past experience. And then there is child. And the child reflects emotions, feelings, and behaviors of the childhood. And so the control strategies are actually in two types. One is authoritative control. It's when the person adopts the critical control and attitude towards another, basically just exerting the force, the strength in respect of the another person, so in respect of the child. Then there is an adaptive control. This means that the person actually tries to control another person by manipulation and by deals, just like a child controls the parent. And so here it looks like the hypothetical Senator Warren, for example, may feel vulnerable and she reverts to the parent state to exert control over crypto industry through authoritative control, like over the child, right? And then the hypothetical Hester Peirce suggests her to use adaptive control, meaning to make a deal to manipulate with the exchanges so that they would do whatever is needed in accordance with the law. And of course, the second explanation is a bit historical. The regulatory history of the US in the 20th century, since the Great Depression, waves of regulatory restrictions in response to economic shocks. It happened almost every 10 years. This demonstrated to the US deep state, the statesmen in general, that the best way to regulate the economy is to exert control over the economy by the waves of restrictions. In fact, this is a very personal story for some of the politicians. For example, Senator Warren that we were talking about already, she used to be Republican in the past. But I don't really think that she actually changed. She used to be a conservative in one things, now she's conservative in some other things more related to economy. You know, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they are conservative in different things, but they're both conservative in some things. What's important to understand is that since President Roosevelt has exerted control over the economy, actually the Great Depression, once something happens, some shock is happening, especially the Democratic administration starts reacting on it with the wave of different restrictive measures. So a number of crises. I guess the most important one is, and you could see it's like 1970s, 1980s, and early 2000s, dot-com bubble burst and Enron scandal. Again, as I said, Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Then the crisis of 2008, we have Dodd-Frank, Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. Every decade or something, this happened. And in a sense, what were happening basically were some kind of mini revolutions in a way. So it was a change of generation, change in the governance, and a certain group of politicians was sorted out. And at the same time, certain group of politicians got new appointments in this wave, and thanks to this wave, and this became part of their biographies. For example, Gary Gensler used to work with Senator Sarbanes on the Sarbanes and Oxley Act. Then, after Obama's election, Gensler became the chair of the CFTC. There, he implemented Dodd-Frank Act. Then, Ross Bannon, the acting head of CFTC, he was working with Senator State now on Dodd-Frank, and again, it was part of his biography. And then Senator Warren, well, she was focused on Dodd-Frank Act, from Frank Act. She was working a lot with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, advocating for it. Certainly, it was an opportunity for her to become the head of this bureau, but it was considered that she would be a too rigorous watchdog if she would become the chief of the agency. So apparently, this explains why she was so mad at Peirce. But in any case, this shows that especially the Democratic administrations, they have been taught when you have a crisis, there is a post-crisis wave of restrictions. And actually, the thing is, I'm not against these restrictions because actually they worked. All of them worked. All of them saved the country. The way, well, of course, there was a small period for what is called Reaganomics when it was actually deregulation. Was a Republican initiative. But otherwise, all of this sets of measures actually worked and gave the result. And when it comes every 10 years, well, it becomes creates for you several generations of politicians who are absolutely sure that the control-focused policy is the right thing to do, especially when there are good effects, right? But there are also bad effects, and they don't vanish. They only accumulate. What are these effects? For one of the quotes of Franz Kafka, which is, every revolution evaporates and leaves behind it only the slime of a new bureaucracy. So what is the slime of bureaucracy? Brian Bruce, ex-Coinbase, ex-BitFury, ex-controller of currency, COC, and ex-Binance US, he was telling something about in the US.
At the regulators, they really don't understand yet, and it's going to force the next generation of financial tech to be created outside of our country. Well, we can't let that happen. So, Mr. Brooks, it's good to see you again. Where do companies draw the line and say that enough is enough with this anti-innovation, quote, regulation by enforcement, and then just decide to take their industry elsewhere to another country? Where's the line?
Well, Mr. Budd, it's good to see you, and thank you for that question. What I would say is, in some aspects of the industry, the line is super clear. There are some products that are legal in other countries and are just not legal here. So I take some of the investment products we've talked about earlier today, for example, exchange-traded funds. One of the things that makes crypto risky is that consumers may not understand the difference between one token and another token, and so they may want to diversify, much as I own an S&P 500 mutual fund. We don't allow that in the United States. We do allow it in Canada. We allow it in Germany, Singapore, Portugal, and a number of other places. So if you're a developer of those products, there's no fuzzy line. It's super clear. You can't do that here. So you have to go abroad. Okay? There are some other places.
Can you say why we can't do that here?
Sure. It's because the Securities and Exchange Commission has consistently refused to approve products that other G20 nations have approved.
So we're behind the curve.
Unquestionably.
So given your previous experience running the OCC, I'd love to hear your perspective on where a regulator's authority begins and ends. Remember the joke earlier this year that everything's infrastructure? Well, it seems like Chairman Gensler thinks that everything is a digital asset that he can regulate. He cites the Howey and the Reeves test without providing any other explanations. So, Mr. Brooks, what are we missing? Because Chairman Gensler clearly doesn't see a limit to his regulatory authority in this area.
Well, Congressman, one thing I learned running, my little agency is that the U.S., and this is not specific to crypto, the U.S. is sort of unique among the developed countries in our fragmented approach to regulation. So when I hear people talk about the idea that we need one regulator for crypto, I would say we should first have one regulator for banks, but we have 3 of them, or if you're an investment bank, 5 of them. So that's inherent in the system that we've got. What I say to that is, the last thing we need to do is add another regulator to a system that's already got dozens of regulators. What we need to do instead is have parity for crypto activity along with traditional finance. If I'm a crypto lending platform, I should probably be regulated by the FDIC. If I'm a crypto trading platform, I should probably be regulated by the CFTC and SEC. But somehow we treat crypto, because it's new, as different from everything else. And I'm going to argue that crypto is just a step function improvement in the system. We already have a regulatory system. The laws are super clear how it works, but there's something about crypto that scares people. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because it's new. But I remember in my banking law class when banks were first allowed to use computers to keep ledgers, people sued over that at the time.
How many regulators are now in the financial system of the United States? Let's look how many regulators are now. Federal Reserve, FinCEN, OFAC, OCC, SSC, CFTC, blah, blah, blah. So there are quite a lot of them. Everything gets stuck in these old buildings when they were actually constructed ad hoc for some specific purpose. And you know what? If you don't clean your farm of old barns, trees, some waste, etc., you will not have place to grow something new. In a sense, what you're looking at is a large-scale regulatory crisis, which none of the political parties could have anything to do, so that it would be the new regulation for crypto. The main reason of that crisis is a huge inertia of the regulation by restriction and by control and by enforcement that has started at least since Great Depression and accumulated by several large generations of statespeople who have a very deep sitting mindset that regulation by control is a good thing and it always works. It's not only Franz Kafka that doesn't like bureaucracy. People in general don't. Just look into and what happened, how it happened this time was this inertia, this inability of the regulators to regulate coincided with a situation that a lot of people actually became already attracted by the crypto exchanges, and quite a lot of people in blue slide who actually voted for Trump, not because they like Trump, not because they are happy with his abortion initiatives, the restrictions on abortions, and his terrible sexist jokes, etc., but because he suggested to liberalize the regulation of assets that they use every day. Just look into this Pew Research materials. The headline, of course, is a bit misleading. It says 63% of Americans are not confident about liability safety of cryptocurrency. Probably this was something that was shown by the Democratic side, but look at the other two graphs. That 61 to 39% of Americans have ever used crypto, and 57% to 38% were happy or okay about their crypto investment. So these figures show that the majority of population are already crypto users and they feel okay about crypto, but at the same time they don't feel comfort about using them. Why? Because there's no enough regulation. The government shouldn't have, and the government in this situation should have dropped everything and urgently moved to dismantle the SEC's requirements and start immediate and concrete plan to integrate cryptocurrency into the lawful turnover in the land with separate, clear, and robust regulations. At the very least, they could, for example, they could pass the Lubis bill, But the Democrats picked a different agenda, a very important one related to the rights of the women. It was a questionable choice on the presidential campaign, given the fact that there are serious economic problems that were also deserved being touched upon. At the same time, people were watching their SSC chair, Gary Gensler, getting grilled, I would say on bipartisan basis by both Republicans and Democrats, including Senator Ward. And these videos from Congress became part, basically, of the Trump's presidential campaign. So they just created materials for his campaign by their own actions. What would be nice, by the way, to look at the sociological studies showing the public perception of these materials. But how, if you see so many queries on the internet, read Gensler with the word grilled, this actually shows the perception. So instead of real solution of the problem, they were watching these strange, sly, and cynical discussions in Congress involving SEC, FTX, and other untrustworthy organizations, reminding them of well-known House of Cards episodes. And then, boo! The election, and Trump is elected. Small revolution of deregulation, I guess, what is happening. This is how RBMK, nuclear reactor core, explodes, right? If we remember Chernobyl HBO movie. He said lies, it was because of lies. But in this case, it is terminal stage of the crisis of bureaucracy. The stage when the bureaucracy is so much ineffective that they cannot even legislate, they cannot even regulate the thing that they would have regulated in the previous decades, but they are not capable of doing this anymore. And this is how the old institutions lose trust, and the voters may return to the old trickster with criminal cases, with fines, etc., from the Republican Party, with his new allies, people also with some scandalous positions, etc. And this is when and how the minority becomes the majority. Flip. Trump is trying to maneuver to show creativity by picking candidates for new posts. This includes very different people. For example, he took Paul Atkins, who actually used for the SEC and used to be the SEC commissioner in the 2000s. Trump is trying to find some kind of an ideal model of new revolutionary government, putting together the puzzle of specific people, balancing one another, etc. So this is no high-level concept, obviously. Everything is made on the fly. The total direct opposite of the rule of nobody from the previous current era. This is not the rule of nobody. This is the rule of some specific, very specific people who God knows how will control the way how this government will work. At the same time, for SEC, and at the same time, he suggests that SEC will not deal with cryptocurrencies anymore. God knows how exactly, because you have how we test, you have which is a Supreme Court decision. Then you have the Securities Act. So you need to do something with that. It's not that easy. To pass a law, it takes time. So it actually leaves questions how people like Paul Atkins would work together with these new newcomers that have never worked in any governmental organization. So this is bad as well. This is bad as well as it is bad to have this bureaucratic system that cannot function itself anymore. So who will come? The PayPal mafia, let's show this fantastic picture showing the founders of the early employees of PayPal, the fintech unicorn from the 2000s, people who invested in each other's project, helping each other in different projects. The portfolio includes X, Tesla, YouTube, SpaceX, LinkedIn, Palantir, etc., etc. So these people actually, PayPal is basically Web 2. So it's funny, you will see some kind of like a situation in which Web 3 will be governed by people from Web 2. Nice. At least people who started working at Web 2. So they're all against this pro-consumer, what they call hypocrisy, which is actually in a sense a restriction on competition. The bad side of all this is that Democrats, they were adamant with their completely wrong strategy, but here we have people very interested, self-made, charismatic people that don't have a regulatory strategy and vision. And I also suspect that they don't believe in democracy, just like they don't believe in any type of due process. So I know these people, I know startup thinking people. And now the researchers of regulation suddenly got into the times when we, instead of boring bills, roadmaps, guidelines, etc., we'll try to discern the future of the regulation in the success story books. But this is because in the US, that you can say about crypto regulations, there is no crypto regulations, it's just enforcement actions. But in fact, on the other hand, I see that there is a lot of regulation in this video. Because the whole story that I was telling you is the proof of one thing. The lack of regulation of digital assets, crypto, finance, etc. is not just some problem on the background, some problem in the backlog that you can think about maybe in a couple of years. At a certain moment, this can become a huge political problem for the whole generation of politicians, for the whole system, for the whole party, just because they cannot react on this specific challenge. The US people have decided to solve the problem radically. Obviously, it's not only about cryptocurrencies, it's about the inflation, other economic issues. We know that it's a lot of problems that people have reacted on. But this obviously will create also the problems of the world. Because Trump is not an institutionalist, God knows where he goes, he doesn't know how to build the state, and now the situation is that it's kind of like, it's in a way mid-revolution, so he needs to build something from scratch. His views on abortions, although this did not help Kamala, they're really crazy and absurd. So that's sad. In terms of the government, in terms of the state, in terms of the regulations in general, it's really hard to make predictions. PayPal Mafia have done a lot of good things, so maybe they can do even on this level as well. Nobody knows. I wouldn't be so surprised that startuppers can adapt to these kind of situations and can do something very good together. Although, of course, it can be looking more like a South Africa with liberties and the inequality of a terrible scale. That the people who voted, in a sense, against stupidity, greed, hypocrisy, they will not be betrayed and fooled. And on the other hand, that the state that has been tested by centuries and refined by a lot of very talented and courageous people, such as, for example, the people from the American Civil Liberties Union, and in a sense, many of the democratic things that are now very important, they are kind of from these organizations, that they will not be perished. And with that, I wish you good night and good luck. Take care.
What would make Hester Peirce most happy to see done in 2025, potentially?
I mean, I would be happy if at the end of 2025, people were not, when we go to crypto conferences, the first thing people were talking about would be something other than SEC regulation. I want people to get to the point where the regulatory structure is there, they know what the rules are, they're complying with the rules, but they're spending their time talking about the technology and its potential. That would make me very happy.
SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce, back on Coinage. Thanks so much for coming back on.
Great to be here, Zach. Thanks for having me. Of course, I've got to tell you my views are my own as a commissioner, not necessarily those of the SEC or my fellow commissioners.
Yes, of course, and we appreciate your own view every time you come on here, because I always learn something, our community always learns something. And right now, just want to jump right into it because a lot's going on at the SEC. Seems like you've got Chair Gensler stepping down. One of your fellow commissioners was up for renomination, not happening anymore. So just first, Commissioner Peirce, what's the state of the SEC right now?
I mean, it's a time of transition for everyone in Washington right now, and I think that's the same at the SEC. We're looking ahead to now, a month from now, what will change, and I think there's a lot of optimism that we can make some forward progress on things. And so there's still going to be a time of uncertainty because it will take some time before our new chairman gets here. But there are, I think, some things that we can do right out of the gate, at least get processes started to make some changes.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to those changes too, obviously it seems like there's going to be a bit of a process, but how long does it take to maybe have those things trickle through a new administration, new chair? What does that look like?
Well, I think what happens on day one is you get an acting chair designated, and then the acting chair can start working on things that are a priority, and one of those issues is going to be crypto. There are a lot of other things going on at the commission, and so we'll get to work. I think one of the things with respect to crypto specifically that we've been saying is that it's really important to have a conversation, and people have been scared to come to the SEC over the past several years to have a conversation, but we're hoping that tone will change and that people will be willing to come in and talk to us, and that we can then figure out as a community, regulators and regulated, what we need to do to move forward. And that should be an open conversation so that everyone can participate, and we can get to the right place.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about what that looks like too under, President Trump picking Paul Atkins, who I know you've worked with before, to lead the agency. Assuming that goes through, what kind of you expect might be kind of a day one change at the SEC under Chair Atkins, for what that could look like when it comes to crypto policy and what you want to see changed perhaps most pressingly?